In this video, I want to analyze why Iran is very different to any other state that the US has attacked, for example, in Iraq and in Syria, and also why it's very different to any military group that Israel has attacked, such as Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. And just before that analysis, it's very clear that the established media is pushing this narrative about how Iran didn't want to negotiate with anyone, that it was an imminent threat, in the same way we heard about Iraq and their mass destruction weapons, which were all lies, to push that narrative for the U.S., to prepare the U.S. Public to accept another war in the Middle East. This is Iraq 2.0. And the interesting thing is that Iran came to the negotiating table with the U.S. and said that we'll let all investigators in to assess everything that we're doing. We're going to limit our nuclear to just civilian use. You can inspect everything that we're doing. We just want to get into a deal and have a better relationship with the U.S. And the reaction to that is Israel killed the Iranian lead negotiator before him coming to the U.S. for one of the last rounds of negotiation. Look at this graph of Iran's nuclear activity, number of installed centrifuges for the nuclear activity. Before this deal that they entered into with the West under Obama, which was in 2016, they had the centrifuges, and that stopped as soon as that deal came into place. They were adhering to the rules, which was confirmed by every agency on the ground. And then when Trump came into power in 2018, he withdrew the U.S. from that deal. And after that, they started to increase their centrifuges with the idea that they have something to give once they enter into a new deal once Trump is gone. But Biden didn't enter a deal with them. Now, saying all that, even their increases over here, this is actually legal within their non-proliferation treaty that Iran signed. This is actually within those terms, which Iran now is saying that given they've been attacked and their nuclear facilities have been attacked, they actually might cancel that treaty. So Trump allowed us to be in this position by canceling that agreement in 2018, and Israel actually allowed the world to reach the brink of global war by killing the negotiating team that the U.S. was negotiating with, killing the leadership in Iran, and now trying to assassinate the Ayatollah, which is the supreme leader in Iran. I want to talk about the consequences of this and why Iran is different. You know, there's this idea that I'm seeing around, if you go to social media and see all the U.S. politicians, they're kind of saying the same thing that they said in Iraq, which is Saddam has nuclear weapons. He can target anywhere around the world. He is a threat to world peace. And if we take him out, the chips will fall, the dominoes will fall, there'll be peace in the Middle East, which obviously were all lies in terms of the weapons. They were no weapons. And also that didn't spread peace in the Middle East. We actually have an ex-ISIS leader in Syria now, which is hilarious. And Iraq became much closer to Iran. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we're not here talking about good and bad. We're just analyzing what actually occurred from what they said will happen to what actually happened, which is Iran and Iraq became much closer because the populations are Shia Islam. And I will go into this. You know, the reason why the U.S. found it very easy initially to topple Saddam Hussein was, one, because Saddam Hussein was a Sunni leader, which is a branch of Islam, and he controlled the population of Iraq, which were majority Shia Islam, which is another branch of Islam, and Kurdish, and there was Sunni population. But the minority in Iraq were Sunni, which is the same sector of Saddam Hussein, and the majority were Shia, and then there was a segment that were Kurdish. The Kurdish were in the north, the Shia were in the south. When you had 20 years, 30 years of brutal dictatorship that was kind of imprisoning, torturing the population, and they weren't part of the same sector, you had the perfect ground for resistance and revolution to happen. Because Shia and Sunni do not align all the time. They fight in a lot of ways. And so you could support a Shia revolution to topple a Sunni leader, right? And you saw the same thing in Syria, where you had a Alawite leader, which is kind of similar to Shia, and he was supported by Shia, with a majority Sunni population. And so you could easily support the Sunni population to revolt against the Shia or Alawite leadership. Now, just to put things in context, Al-Qaeda is a Sunni organization. Saudi Arabia, the Gulf are mostly Sunni, have a Sunni population and Sunni leadership. That's different to Iran, and that's why ISIS is against Iran, And if Iran is ever toppled, you'll see ISIS emerge in Iran. And this is why ISIS was fighting Bashar al-Assad in Syria with the support of America, which is crazy, again. And this is why the ex-ISIS leader is now the leader of Syria. So that is a different dynamic. It's much more easy to kind of create or topple leadership when you have a population that is of a different sector in terms of religion to the leadership, which is what happened in Syria, what happened in Iraq. That is very different to Iran. Iran, you have the population as Shia, and the leadership is Shia. Not only the leadership Shia, you have the Ayatollah, which is like the Pope for Shia Islam, sitting in Iran. And this is who Israel is trying to kill. The Pope, basically, of Shia Islam. The consequences of that, whether you think, it doesn't matter, again, we said, it doesn't matter what you think about whether the Ayatollah is bad or good. We're doing just an analysis here. The killing of the Pope of Shia Islam would engulf the world in a religious war that transcends anything to do with nations. This will engulf every single nation in the world because there's Shias everywhere in the world. And now the Pope of the Shias has just been killed by Israel with America's support, of course. Even though America came out and said Israel made a request from us to eliminate Khamenei, which is the Ayatollah, but we rejected. No one believes the U.S. anymore. They say one thing, they do something else, as we saw with the negotiation. The trust and credibility of Trump and the U.S. has never been lower. Whatever they say cannot be trusted anymore. And that's, even if you're American, you must see that too, because they time and time again, they've shown, they say something, they try to convince people of one stance, and then they do something completely in a different stance. So negotiating with the U.S. will never be the same, and all the world is seeing that and taking note of that. So this kind of killing of the Pope of Shia Islam will result in, obviously, a religious war that will involve all the nations. Of course, it will involve Iraq, which has a big Shia population, will involve many, Hezbollah, which is a Shia militant group, and a lot in Lebanon are Shia. And so you start to fight a war where one side believes that death will lead them to a better place. It's a very difficult war to fight because it's never ending. You cannot fight a population whereby they're fine with dying because they think they're going to go to somewhere else, heaven, through death, through martyrdom. This is an endless war that will never finish, no matter what technology you have, because the other side doesn't need technology to kill your side. It needs a knife, it needs small weapons. That's not what we want. This is why everything should be done to not allow Israel to kill Khamenei, even though Netanyahu said that's on the table. And I think they're looking to do that, really. The idea they think is that if you topple Khamenei, it's like toppling Saddam Hussein or like toppling Bashar al-Assad. Very different things. People see this person as a pope, they follow him to death, and there are millions of people all around the world that would follow him to death. This is an attack on Islam. It would involve many different nations in this war. Now, the reason also why it's different to Hamas and Hezbollah, because Hezbollah doesn't have the weaponry like Iran does. Iran has ballistic missiles that, as we've seen, is going into Israel, and Israel's Iron Dome isn't doing much about it. What Iran's doing is they are firing these kind of cheap rockets, which go into Israel, and Israel's Iron Dome attacks it and kind of brings it down. But those cheap missiles are followed by ballistic missiles, which are very fast, and because the Iron Dome is depleted, most of it is, it's actually breaking through and landing in Israel. Iran has targeted the oil refinery in Haifa. They've targeted the Ministry of Defense in Tel Aviv, which is right in the center of Tel Aviv, and there's been damage around the residential buildings around that Minister of Defense. But they've been targeting a lot of strategic sites. We don't know all of them because Israel has said we're not giving any information about that. The only information that they're showing is the civilian death casualties. They're not showing anything to do with military or strategic or confirming any of that. We're seeing those reports from people on the ground showing us the sites of where the bombs are landing. So Iran has thousands and thousands of these ballistic missiles, which Israel's Iron Dome is not doing anything about. So Israel doesn't have a proper defense. For the first time in its history, it's being attacked in a way that the population has never seen. The attacks of Hamas or the attacks of Hezbollah are nothing compared to this, because they are much smaller missiles. The Iron Dome intercepts 99% of it. So usually there's nothing landing on anything strategic in Israel. This is completely different. And if Iran is able to continuously do this for a number of days, I mean, if they can do this for another week, then this would be a complete failure for Netanyahu's government, because how could they not have put in measures to stop that from happening? He is literally putting Israeli lives on the line because he attacked Iran in an unprecedented way, where they're calling it the Pearl Harbor of Iran, because Iran seems to have been unprepared for such an attack. They didn't think that, Iran thought that they would attack the strategic sites, but not kill so many of their leadership. So Iran obviously had to take time to kind of fill the gaps. And as they filled the gaps, we saw more and more missiles come across. Israel said that they've attacked many of their launchers, which turned out to be actually decoys. Iran put out launchers in sites which were dummies. They weren't actually proper launchers, because when Israel bombed them, there was no secondary reaction. So according to the military analyst, that means it's a decoy, which is apparently a standard way to deceive the enemy. And so Israel thought that it took out a lot of the launches, Iran's launches, but turns out it didn't. And so there's a continuous reaction from Iran into Israel, which was not expected. And that's why initially we thought this was a huge decapitating attack on Iran that would mean that there's a vacuum where maybe the population would take over, or some other thing would take over, but that didn't happen in Iran. And actually, as more time goes by, Iran becomes stronger and stronger because it's getting supplements from its neighboring countries like Russia, Pakistan, China's helping out, some other Muslim countries are helping out, and it's kind of re-strategizing and getting ready to continuously attack Tel Aviv until there is a ceasefire. And as time goes by, Israel becomes weaker because it's using all its very expensive ammunition to defend itself, but also the defense is not working, but also to attack Iran, which seems like today, which is Monday, 16th of June, we're seeing huge attacks in Iran right now, where Israel has said they've taken over the airspace in Iran. So let's see how that turns out to be. But Iran is a big area, and we don't know exactly where they hold all their weapons. They have a lot of deep underground bunkers, storage units. So, Israel taking out Iran's initial response, Israel took a gamble because it thought that maybe that would decapitate Iran and it would not be able to respond. But clearly Iran is responding in a way that Israel has never seen before. And Israel's strategy is very clear. It's how do we get the U.S. involved in this? Because Israel has started the war, and it's very easy for Israel to start the war, but it cannot finish the war. Finishing the war means destroying the nuclear facilities of Iran and having regime change. Destroying the nuclear facilities is not possible with the equipment that Israel has. It doesn't have enough of those bunker blasting missiles to go deep under in the nuclear facilities. It requires America's help to do so. And regime change is going to be also very difficult because it's very easy to replace people unless you kill the Ayatollah and many more leadership and leave a huge gap, which would cause chaos, but also it would engulf the whole world in a war that we definitely do not want to see. I just want to show you how quick these missiles are from Iran into Israel, that the Iron Dome defense system doesn't work at all against it. Look how quick that is. Look how quick that is. So quick. Also, there are reports that the Iron Dome system is malfunctioning in some areas and it's actually falling into Israel. Look at this. Look at those two in the end. It's actually falling into Israel from the Iron Dome itself. So Israel is attacking itself, obviously by mistake. Obviously, it's a malfunction. This is an attack on Haifa in Israel. Look how slow the defense system is, and look at the missile that's going to come in right now. See that over there? That is really quick. So to summarize, Iran is not like any of these other countries. It has amazing capabilities, as we've seen. And I think this was not factored in. I think Israel thought they would be able to destroy a lot of their missile capability before Iran reacts. And I think Iran has a lot of those missiles to shoot at Israel. And so the longer this goes, the worse it gets for Israel, the better it gets for Iran. Now, today we're going to see a lot of damage in Iran because it seems like the IDF has air control over the area. So Israel is going to do a last stage of destroying everything it can destroy today before Iran gets back that capability and get reinforcement from neighboring countries. You know, obviously Russia has a big interest in Iran. Iran helped it in the war as at the beginning of the war with Ukraine. And so Russia, one, has military interests, but also economic interests. And obviously a lot of the oil that China receives from the world comes from Iran. So it's a big interest for China too. So Iran's part of the BRICS nation. So it's a big deal that Iran's being attacked. And obviously Israel's doing everything it can to get the US involved. And this is just so much like, Iraq. It's like Iraq 2.0, whereby they had to make this case for the world that Iraq was a dangerous place. And so it had anthrax, remember, where there wasn't any of those weapons. And they lied. They lied to the UN. They lied to everyone. But at least they tried to provide evidence, or it was fake evidence, but they provided something to the world. Israel's not providing anything around Iran. It just completely attacked Iran out of the blue and killed a lot of its leadership and scientists and obviously civilians. The civilian death toll is more than 200 in Iran, where Israel, the death toll is about 25. Let me know your thoughts about how you think this is going to end, whether this is going to escalate into a regional war involving many different parties. Iran, the strategic action it needs to take is not getting the US involved. That's the thing it needs to try to do, obviously. And for Israel, it's getting the US involved. It's going to try everything to get the US involved because it needs the US to create regime change, to destroy the nuclear facilities of Iran. And the longer this goes, the worse it gets for Israel and the better it gets for Iran. If you did like this video, do like and hit that subscribe button.